the United States of America is the one advanced nation on earth in which we do not have sufficient common sense gun safety laws, even in the face of repeated mass killings. This is something we should politicize.
Come out, Obama, and lecture us now. There's been another mass shooting in another small town. Politicize it while the blood is still fresh on the ground. So start pounding that podium. And that same old speech that you always give, pushing the same old liberal anti-gun narrative. But you can be 100% positive that when a crazy person shoots someone, you know Obama's gonna blame the gun. That's what he does. And he always blames the gun. He always blames the gun. This new regulations are good for us all, because we all know criminals love following laws. All you bitter clangers best be quick on the draw. They'll take the weapons from a bunch of nuns. And who cares about all those inconvenient facts like that? A background check wouldn't have stopped the attack. They say the only way to stop a murderous maniac is through some federal legislation, because the liberals always blame the guns. It's a brain-free zone. The problem is always the guns. Gotta go grab those guns. They say we all would be behind the liberals' common sense gun solution, but we're all being played by the evil NRA. But maybe you should look into this thing they call the Constitution. It's a document the founders made. You should have learned about it in second grade, but you were probably sleeping today. They're going after the AR-15 and tomorrow high-capacity magazines. To think that stopping there would be insanity. You know it ain't gonna be much fun when only the bad guys have guns. That's gonna suck. The bad guys don't get their guns like always a gun show.
You never want a serious crisis to go to waste.
You know the people don't seem to be enamored with your agenda. They know the problem won't be solved with another round of gun control. No, no, no. So go up to Chicago, stay there a bit. Soon you wish you had a concealed carry permit, because the gun laws everywhere. Walk in a spit, but break into my house and you better run. Cause I'm a good guy and I have a gun. I'll pop a cap in your butt. Best way to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. The liberals will blame the gun. They always blame the gun. You ain't gonna have much fun if you try to take my gun. It's not a killer's fault, it's an inanimate object's fault. The liberals will blame the gun. They always blame the gun.
Just awesome. That's just too awesome to waste. I saw that earlier today, and I won't tell you where I got it, but trust me, it was a fan, and a fan of the show too. But anyway, and I was just like, okay, we've got our intro. So anyway, welcome to this week's edition of Lock and Load, and we're glad to see you all in the room. And it was. Yeah. Oh, I guess I can take those off.
For right now, yeah.
Yeah. So can't listen as I am in family meeting. Oh, I'm so sorry, Chris. So keep Chris S in your prayers. His father passed last evening. Yeah, just keep him in your prayers, because having going through my own issues with my own father, You can imagine.
Might as well be my sheriff singing.
So anyway, we'll move on. But anyway, yes, it was that song was priceless. And Chris, if you want a good laugh at some point when you're ready, you really do need to listen to that song. It was
He's
pretty
in the-
epic.
He's in the chat room saying he can't listen to the show, so he can't.
I
hear
said
you
at
say
some
it.
point. Oh, right. Well, maybe he'll listen to the show later. So anyway, yes, Bolts. Yes, I did. Bolts. I got your PM about your sheriff. Yes, ARS. Oh, I forget here. Okay. So anyway, the December 9th edition of Lock and Load Radio, as always, let me thank Mike for coming and producing. And remind everybody that the opinions expressed on this show are not the opinions of anybody else but Mike and I, and we are not acting unless we specifically tell you, and I mean specifically tell you, we are only acting as ourselves and not on behalf of any organization, company, agency, or otherwise that somebody would love to misconstrue. You can't, because we're just giving our opinions. Same as I've done for I think 3 years now. I have to go back and look.
I don't know.
And you've been doing this show almost a year, I think. So
Off and on. I mean, I subbed a couple of times for John before that. So
yeah. So I can't see you. Just checking. So Chris can't hear us, but he's typing
Keller watching.
the Boston Pops. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So he says, Chris wanted to know if my hair was still red. And I said, yes, duh. And he said, just checking. I can't see you like Helen Keller watching the Boston Pops. We'll leave him go on that one. So, all right. So we were off the air for Thanksgiving, and then we were off the air last week. And my apologies to everybody, but I'm sure you'll understand. My dad is having a little trouble. He put him, well, we didn't put him, the doctor recommended, and he and we followed through, and he's in assisted living. Andy is now speaking in Braille. At any rate, it's been, you guys know he was in rehab before, and so he went home, and it didn't get much better. So, yeah, so that's where he is, and he's slowly getting accustomed, but he hates the food. And this is my father, who will eat literally anything. So I think it's more about control than it is anything else, and I can understand. So we'll see how that goes. So bear with us. If something goes wrong again and we have to cancel, it's going to be because of that. But
tell you we'll be having a show next week.
Okay.
It happens to be my wife's birthday, so.
Oh, yes. Well, okay. Unless I can find a producer, we will not be having a show next week. Yes. Okay. Well, I realize that.
What time does session actually start?
Noon.
Noon on that day?
Oh, yes. January 13th. Morpheus is posting.
I'm just being a dork. There's 1,094,654 seconds until session.
Okay, then. Thank you for letting us know.
49,910 minutes, 831 hours, or 34 days.
4 days. What was that? Morpheus post, just an FYI, I'm sure you all know, Maryland State Police said the right to carry was a privilege and that it was ridiculous to need a gun to answer a phone. What? I don't know what that means.
At the HPRB.
Ridiculous to need a gun to answer a phone?
As in, we shouldn't even be giving business permits.
Oh. Even though the trooper who made that comment sits in a trailer all day and meets with people who cleared through a thorough background check, I am waiting the decision about removing my permit restrictions. The HPRB threads are some of the most educational threads on Maryland shooters, says Rain Man. All right, okay. So yeah, apparently interesting things happened at the HPRB meeting, which I'm not privy to because I didn't make the meeting and I don't know who did. In other news, according to WMAL.com, well, we will get to Richard Cross's article in a few minutes. I desperately want to tell you about this, but because he's a friend of mine and I love the article, but I want to talk about the White House spokesman. This is according to CNN, but I'm getting it off of WMAL. And the headline is White House spokesman Donald Trump, Muslim comment disqualifies him from the presidency.
I didn't know that the sitting president was allowed to disqualify anybody from an election.
I'm not sure how you get disqualified from a presidential election. The fact is what Donald Trump said yesterday. This has to do with him saying that Muslims should be banned from entering the United States.
Full quote, until such time as Congress has a chance to review.
But that's CNN. They would never actually give the whole quote.
But I am, just because that's the type of people we are.
Right. The quote, the fact that what Donald Trump said yesterday, the fact is what Donald Trump said yesterday disqualifies him as serving as president. White House Press Secretary Josh Earnest said in Tuesday's briefing, for a White House administration to weigh so heavily in an opposing party's nominating contest is a highly unusual step. I would
say it's borderline unethical, but
well,
that's me. So Josh Earnest, not in the White House press room, has certainly every right to say.
Right.
Josh Earnest behind the podium, representing the sitting president, does not.
And frankly, pretty sure he's dead wrong. And since when does the press secretary give the advice? And I am pretty sure that the only way you can get disqualified from running for president is if somebody actually proves that you aren't like 35, aren't like actually a citizen, aren't like, the constitutional mandates. So no, it doesn't disqualify him. And I know you guys know better, but there are some low information voters out there, and I'm sure you know some. If that gets brought up at the holiday party, please explain to them about the Constitution.
So, Rain Man. Law from 1952 says a sitting president can do exactly what Trump called for. And from Bolts, and I haven't found an attributable source for this one yet, but I've seen the same thing. And Jimmy Carter did it during the Iran crisis in the late 70s.
In the
late 70s.
Oh, yeah.
The Iran hostage crisis.
Interesting.
So it's again, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. The Democrats can do it,
right. Which actually will tie into what Richard Cross wrote about in a little bit. Earnest noted first that every president must take an oath to preserve, protect, and defend the U.S. Constitution, and thus he said Trump would not qualify. Well, the GOP frontrunner, but Earnest had. I'm skipping ahead. Lots of criticism for Trump's statement, however you feel about it. But Earnest had a harsh word for the GOP as a whole to say all president candidates have signed a pledge to support whomever is the eventual nominee. I don't think Trump signed that, did he?
Yes, he did.
Oh, he did finally. Yes. Okay. Quote, for Republican candidates, for Republican candidates for president, stand by their pledge to support Mr. Trump. That in and of itself is disqualifying, Earnest said. The question is now about the rest of the Republican Party and whether or not they're going to be dragged into the dustbin of history with him. Right now, the current trajectory is very good. See, what this is about, and I am telling you, pay attention, okay? This is strategy. Because the Republicans are not attacking each other, he's trying to mix it up so that he weighs and defends themselves. Hopefully, our GOP presidential hopefuls have enough sense not to buy into this nonsense. But he's figuring, and I know Obama is figuring, since this is his press secretary, that if they can stir it up, somebody will. Oh, they said mean things about me. I have to respond. Yeah. So this is strategy. We're getting desperate. Hillary may be doing well amongst Democrats, like she might be the forerunner for the Democratic Party nomination. Fine. I'd be interested to know up against, say Trump or Rubio or somebody else, how they would do. Ernest cited the election of House Majority Whip Steve Scalise, who a reporter said once joked he was like white supremacist David Duke without the baggage, and a leaked Republican Senate campaign memo instructing candidates how to voters' support for Trump. He also noted that House Speaker Paul Ryan said Tuesday he would vote for Trump if he were the GOP nominee, though he admitted the fact that Ryan equivocally rebuked Trump's comments, and they said they were, quote, not who we are as a party and unconstitutional. Yeah, it may not be who we are as a party, may be who we are as a party, but it is not. It's not unconstitutional. There's nothing in the Constitution that says we have to take immigrants.
No, and more specifically, in the Constitution, this is immigrant policy squarely in the hands of Congress, not the president.
Right. So, oh, and look, Secretary of State John Kerry weighed in too. It's all strategy. The Democratic Party they're having trouble getting the Republicans to eat their own. I am prayerful that that they will continue to stand up for what they believe in and not beat up on either, because you really haven't seen a whole lot of that. I mean, you've seen disagreement on philosophy, on policy, but you haven't seen a lot of disagreement on, there's real name calling and bashing and this and that, the other thing. So what do you got?
Bolt's MJD, I actually remember Carter doing it. And I looked it up. So some of it is canceled differences. So, and Snopes has the lovely comment in there that, well, he didn't ban immigration, he just canceled visas. Well, if you can't get a visa to come to the country, then you immigrate legally. Rain Man, Bolts, I was sitting right next to the Carters in church when the week they did that.
Oh, really?
Bolts, was he eating peanuts in church?
Right.
And Apple, Rain, you gave yourself away. Now you are Brian Williams.
Oh, see, that's not good. My grandparents were, this is from Rain Man, my grandparents were elders in the church, and I don't know what it stands for. Service wanted people they could trust. The class plopped my 10-year-old, took us
Keister
down right next to Rosalind. Amy was in my regular Sunday school class. Really? I did not know that. Apparently has okay. Moving on. We're going to get into some other stuff here shortly. Actually, let me put this in a different way. You know what? I might stop printing this out. This is coming out for me. Facebook, and I totally scarfed it for tonight's show. 14 things everyone should understand about guns. Guns aren't that complicated. Learn a little bit about them before you lecture other people. Gun safety. This is from thefederalist.com, and normally I would not be using websites that I'm not familiar with, but he makes some excellent points. And
actually, I believe it was a war writer.
No, it's Sean Davis, and I don't think that looks like a woman.
Oh, okay.
Either that or it's a really homely looking woman. So anyway, yes, this was printed. Actually, it was printed last February. Apparently, what? Oh no, what are they doing?
No, it's something I was looking at on Facebook.
Okay. So he's talking about, there's no excuse to be ignorant about firearms. They've been around for hundreds of years. They've been owned and operated safely by tens of millions of Americans each year, and our Constitution guarantees our right to possess guns so that we'll be able to defend ourselves against those who would violently take away our freedom. Many gun controllers, however, some of whom have bylines from major media organizations, don't actually know the first thing about firearms. And he gives the example of Ryan J. Riley, who apparently writes for the Huffington Post. And I know it's going to shock you that this person has got a liberal bent, but there is a picture, and I'll put the link in the chat room because that's the only place I can put it. But you must go look at the picture. They are the little orange, I don't know what those things are made out of, but the little orange foamy things you put. Yeah, the earplugs.
They're foam rubber.
And Ryan J. Riley tweeted out in August of 2014, I believe these are red rubber bullets. Can anyone confirm? Seriously? Seriously. Unfortunately, Riley is hardly alone in his complete ignorance of how guns work. Our nation is facing an epidemic of gun-related misreporting. And I think that's a very diplomatic way of saying what's going on. So, so the rules according to, what was his name? Sean Davis. Number one, don't lecture anyone on gun safety until you understand the basic rules. No, and you guys all know the basic rules. So, treat all guns like they're loaded, never point the muzzle at anything you don't intend to destroy, keep your finger off the trigger until your sights are on the target and you are prepared to fire, and always confirm target is in front, behind, and around it. And I did that just in case we had a liberal listening. Not for you guys, because I know that just puts you to sleep. Each rule is effectively a backup in case you ignore the previous rule. You always assume it's a gun that's loaded, then you'll never have to say, Your Honor, I didn't know it was loaded. If you screw up the first rule, then rule 2 will prevent you from shooting someone unintentionally because your muzzle will be pointed in this direction, blah, blah, blah. So I'm going to explain about that. Number 2, how often have we said this on the show? Guns are inanimate objects. Guns don't kill people. People kill people. Maybe widely mocked by ignorant gun controllers, but it's true. Spoons don't make me fat. Also true is the fact that guns don't kill people. Bullets do, but but if we really be, but it's a good point. He goes on to explain why, and again, a gun can't load itself. A magazine can't load. A magazine cannot load a magazine by itself. A gun cannot secure a loaded magazine by itself. An empty gun cannot chamber around a rack of slide by itself. A gun cannot pull a trigger. All of these, and they give some more reasons, but all of these reasons why I personally dislike the term accidental shooting, because it suggests a lack of accountability and responsibility. A more appropriate term is negligent shooting, since human action is required to do all of the things that you need to fire a firearm of any sort, long or hand. But what about intentional shootings where innocent people are targeted? Those don't just require human agency, they require criminal intent. That's why we punish those rather than their weapons. Number 3, modern guns do not accidentally go off. As noted in the previous example, in order for a gun to go bang, a specific sequence must occur that drives crazy when the new gun went off. Note the passive voice. And he uses a quote from WNEP, which is Channel 16. I don't know what. Oh, it must be out of, I'm thinking Indiana. Investigation underway after officer's gun went off inside. I don't know what happened to that, but it didn't go off. Yeah. So number 4, I'm skipping ahead. Semi-automatic and automatic are not synonyms. Enough said. Moving on. Clip and magazine are not synonyms. And yes, there is. We know that there is a clip that you can put. It clips rounds together. But as I explained to people who do not shoot, a clip is something you put in your hair, and a magazine is something you put ammunition in. Because I'm not going to get into the whole, If you don't shoot, you don't care to shoot, you don't want to learn about it, that's the easiest way to get them.
Well, you still kind of use a clip and put it in a magazine. It's a box magazine that just happens to be built in. And WNEP is Scranton, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Actually sitting in the town of Moosic, Pennsylvania.
Okay. Gun safeties can and will fail. Although it's become something of a cliche in firearm handling courses, it is absolutely true that the only safety that matters is the one between your ears. Like any inanimate object, no gun is foolproof. Mechanical devices can and will fail, kind of like your car. If you rely on your gun's external safety as a substitute for following the more basic safety rule, which we talked about, you are going to get yourself into trouble. This doesn't mean that gun safeties are bad. They're not at all. They're incredibly valuable. Some manufacturers do not even install external mechanical safeties on firearms, which by the way, I prefer. The only way to prevent a negligent discharge from a firearm is to follow the 4 basic gun safety rules 100% of the time. The here's my third. So-called smart technology is not reliable. Okay, do you guys need me to rant about that? I'm thinking not. But he pulls up Twitter's from somebody named Dave Frum. We should know who that is, but I don't. And John Tabin. John Tabin tweeted, follow at Dave Frum. That point, gun safety has an actual meaning. When you use it to mean gun control, you're being dishonest. And David Frum came back and said, not so. So smart gun technology advances gun safety. It encounters severe opposition by the gun lobby that wishes. And I think he ran out of characters there. In practice, the unproven and unreliable technology demanded by gun controllers is a disaster waiting to happen because, as you said, just as your computer doesn't always do what you want it to do, nor will smart gun technology, because mechanics, you don't rely on a safety. So anyway, moving on. Giving someone a badge doesn't make him a good shooter. I'm just not even going to go there. The AR in AR-15 does not stand for assault rifle. It stands for Armalite. And we've talked about that a little bit. The company that developed the white rifle platform back in the 1950s, today the AR-15 trademark is owned by Colt, but which bought the rights to the AR-10 and the AR-15 from Armalite back in 1959. So that was interesting. High-capacity magazines are completely counterproductive. And I really don't want to get into why, because, you know, some stupid liberal will say, oh, my God, that Andy Maroney was out there telling everybody it's all her fault. Anyway, so I will just, for the sake of our lovely listeners, talk about the tweet from Scott McGrew, who is apparently has a problem. Let's see. Member of Congress pushing for ban on high-capacity magazines did not appear to understand what a magazine actually is. From the Denver Post, he's referencing the Denver Post article as lead sponsor in-house on gun legislation. Congressman Diana DeGette appears not to understand how they work. Yeah, so let's see if I can find that. I should have tracked that down before I read it. Sorry, guys. Yeah. Democratic, this is from 2013, but is an example of what he's talking about. The senior congresswoman from Denver, not to asked how a ban on magazines holding more than 15 rounds would be effective in reducing gun violence. The congresswoman said, I will tell you, these are ammunition. They're bullets. So people who have those know they're going to shoot them. So ban them in the future. The number of these high-capacity magazines is going to decrease dramatically over time because the bullets will have been shot and there won't be any more available. Boy, I'll bet she makes her party proud. For 11, to wound is absurd and dangerous. Whenever you hear about a fatal police shooting, you're almost guaranteed to see a commentator wonder aloud why police aren't trained to shoot to wound. The simple truth is because police aren't idiots. Shoot to wound is a terrible idea that also happens to be incredibly unsafe. Oh, look, we have a tweet from Cher on this very subject. Cher, do police ever do arms, legs, shoulders be targets? The stress must be unbearable. But is there enough judgment training? Are you kidding me? Moving on.
You shoot center mass because it's the biggest target.
Yeah. Yep. And it's a lot easier to miss on a limb. Hollow point jackets are actually safer than standard full metal jacket ammunition. Whenever a reporter, gun controller, screenwriter, or general ignoramus wants to make ammunition sound super dangerous and sketchy, they'll talk about hollow point bullets. What they don't understand is that these are actually far safer than standard FM full metal all ammunition. Why? Because they're less likely to over penetrate. But Joe Palazzo tweeted following: Ninth Circuit blesses San Francisco's trigger lock requirement and ban on the sale of hollow point bullets. And A federal appeals court, this is from 2014, federal appeals court up in San Francisco ordinance require handgun owners to keep their weapons locked up or on their person when they're at home. Yeah, and the article does go on to talk about, how terrible hollow point bullets are because, scary ghosts, and lions and tigers and bears.
And overpenetration. Oh my.
Number 13. Most gun owners do not. Most gun owners. You notice I look. Most gun owners understand gun laws a lot better than gun controllers do. Yeah. For instance, this tweet from John Fugelsang, who apparently is somebody because he's got the verified account next to his name, and he says at Scott Steven, 90% of Americans favor ending the gun show loophole, but NRA owns enough Dems and GOPs to block even having a vote. There's no gun show loophole. You still have to, if you buy a firearm at a gun show, you still have to.
A dealer.
You have to go through an FFL.
From a dealer. You do not have to go through it. You do not necessarily. If you and I went to a gun show in the state of Maryland, I could easily sell you a rifle. Perfectly legal. If Shannon goes to a gun show in Virginia, Heather can sell her a rifle. If you are in-state residents of the same state, in the state where the transaction takes place, it's legal. If you or I were to go to Virginia, yes, an FFL must be involved in all firearms transactions.
The vast majority of gun show sales are conducted by federal firearms licensees
Correct.
or FFLs. And FFLs are strictly regulated by the federal government. Every FFL sale must be accompanied by a background check. No ifs, ands, or buts. Every sale of a firearm. But by the way, I can't go buy a rifle without a NICS background check.
Not from a dealer. Correct. You have from a dealer used to, for private sale, you can. It's at that point, it is actually on the seller. It's on the seller's head. I was having this discussion. I was literally the one I texted you about. I was having this discussion with a woman at church last weekend. Face-to-face sales are legal between residents of the same state, subject to the state's laws. So in Maryland, face-to-face sales of a handgun must go through a dealer or through the MSP. Face-to-face sale of a rifle is not a regulated firearm. Our cash and carry, you give me the money, I give you the firearm. It's on, at that point, both under state and federal law, it is on my shoulders that you should be a legal person. I know, be reasonably certain that you're a legal person to sell the firearm to.
And last but not least.
And hold on, Rain Man, yes, that is the gun show loophole they're referring to when they use the term. The fact that there are the potential for face-to-face sales between citizens of the same state. Sorry, I was catching
But
up.
you would actually, well, okay. Universal background checks are already the law in many states. What gun controllers won't tell you is that universal background checks are the norm in a large number of states. I wonder if it's I would think it is the case in California.
What?
Universal background checks?
Yeah, California and Maryland, New Jersey are all similar in their regard.
Right. So North Carolina, Illinois, but we don't.
Every state has its own rules. Some are more restrictive than others. Some are on all firearms, some require on handguns.
Other states that require universal background checks on all firearm purchases include California and New York. How's violent crime in those states other than really high? Yes. So, yeah. So I thought that was a pretty good article and thought we should bring it up.
And yes, Dr. Blast, face-to-face really does have nothing to do with guns. It's a face-to-face sale. It just happens to be that some of them do take place at gun shows, and that's what the bleeding hearts like to raise a stink about and throw up their hands and go, oh my God.
We're going to talk about Richard Cross's article, but I want to talk about this Project Veritas piece.
Hold that thought for a couple of minutes because we are negligent in doing things that I want to make sure we try to do them every now and then.
Okay.
So we wait. One thing, real quick.
Promoting the other shows?
Promoting the other show.
Good.
If my computer will ever respond. I have people sending me candy orders at the same time, so my email was just going off with something.
Another thing I've been doing is pick cash checking. Candy.
You are listening to the Free State Radio Network. Be sure to listen to all our great shows. Tuesday nights at 8 p.m., it's The Vast Right-Wing Conspiracy with Jimmy, Ethan, Tom, and Paul. Bring your guns on Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. and join John and Andy with Lock and Load Radio. Thursday nights at 9 p.m., it's the Non-Aggression Principle with Tim and Paul. Fridays at 4 p.m. is the Free State Happy Hour. So bring your drinks and be ready to relax. Follow us on Twitter at Free State Radio. Load our podcasts from iTunes by searching for Free State Radio and visit us on Facebook and the web at www.freestateradio.com.
Hello, Sister Margaret Fussy Knickers. You're about to listen to Free State Radio. Why? I don't know. You may hear subversive ideas like liberty, responsibility, and rights. You may even hear bad word from those foul mouths they call talent. So you best shut your mouth and open your mind, because Free State Radio is now on the air.
Yay! Free State Radio, yay! I put up this article, but I actually have seen the video, the Project Veritas and I will not attempt to enunciate the Maryland Deputy Attorney General who is in the Project Veritas piece. You have not seen it. Well, I will post the NRA piece and you can pull the link from there and it'll be much easier. But Project Veritas, don't know a deal about. I did see the video because a former staffer of mine actually sent it to me. YT sent it to me. And apparently this Maryland Attorney General, it was attending a national conference of state attorneys general in New York City. By the way, a married state attorney general. Okay, so fine, but the problem that I have with the piece is yes, I have a problem with his viewpoint. I disagree with him on his viewpoint, but at one point you watch the video, she says to him, this is off the record, sort of, kind of, or something. She mitigates it. She says it's off the record. And then she says like sort of, or maybe, or she thinks or whatever. But speaking with an undercover journalist, when asked about what type of gun control regime he would impose, Viznar, I can't do it. My complete answer, he says to her, my complete answer off the record is that we should ban guns altogether, period. Now here's the problem. If he's giving you an answer off the record and you're on the record, I have use for you. Okay, I don't like his viewpoint, but he is not the Attorney General. He works for Brian Frosh. He does what he's told. And I know an awful lot of assistant attorney generals, and they all they actually do good work. But I happen to agree. I happen to disagree with this guy's viewpoint. But the problem is that when he said it was off the record, she should have been respectful of that. She also shouldn't have told him that it was off the record. Sort of. So I really, not really a fan of that particular piece because I find it dishonest. No, I agree with him. I don't like his boss's standpoint on gun control. You guys know how I feel about it, but do watch the piece. It's an interesting thing. He thought he was gonna score with this girl, and it didn't work out for him, but I imagine his wife might have something to say about it. So, okay. So now we're at my favorite part of the evening, and I'm hoping that Richard is listening, but if not, then he's just going to miss out me bragging about my friend. So Richard Cross is posted an article in the Frederick Post. It was posted December 7th, and he threw it up on his Facebook page, and that's how I ran across it. It's in the opinion column section. And Richard is, I really like Richard. I always have. He's a thinker. He's a fine strategist. He is a good man. He did work for Governor Ehrlich, and this moved on and is sort of a political observer, if you will. He's not really active with campaigns per se, that I know of, but he still enjoys commenting on them, and he really is.
By the way, Dan just joined.
Oh, hey, Dan. So anyway, so his article is really fascinating. It's called "Political Stunts." As it says, as first member of Maryland's scrappy Republican Party, I can attest to the fact that being in the permanent minority status is no picnic. The party's overall success are limited to their own organizations, and he goes on to talk about that basically we are outnumbered. Republicans are outnumbered more or less 2-1. He says, yeah, but things have changed. The Democrats are still the majority party, but they're now the party as well. When Governor Larry, and I'm skipping ahead because you really should read the article, and I think Richard would call me up and yell at me if I read the whole article on the air. I did this in Manchester, so you can go find it. When Governor Larry Hogan announced in November that the state had a $320 million budget surplus, Democratic, and I agree with the term Democrat legislators. There's nothing democratic about them, unless you agree with them. In which case, then they'll count your vote. Democrat legislators quickly organized a press event to resurrect the Geographic Cost of Index, GCEI, which helps some jurisdictions defray extra costs. Hogan partially funded the index, failing to satisfy some Democrats. Of course, Senator Rich Mantel's comment was, quote, "Halloween is over. Stop trying to trick the people of the state of Maryland into believing we don't have the money." And when the governor declined to fund the red line, the executive director of the Maryland Democrat Party launched a press release accusing Hogan, of course, of partisan politics. And he goes on. So, just as I get it. The governor was elected on a platform of eschewing typical partisan politics and working cooperatively with Democrats on tax, budget, and spending issues. Enlightened post-partisan government is his brand. All of these recent partisan stunts have been attempts to undermine that brand. These things happen in politics. The only thing is, Richard and I don't think these taxes are working so well. Governor's approval rating has swelled to 63%, according to a recent poll, and he has a 51% approval rating amongst Democrats, which is wow. And, the issues he points out that the issues that the Democrats have chosen to highlight are political losers. GCEI, most people don't care. It was, largely settled during the last legislative session, and the red line lacks the degree of support the purple line does in Montgomery County. And he talks about the Syrian refugees, and Marylanders are split on the issue, and the response seems to be measured. Some in the bipartisan group of governors who raised similar questions. And, he concludes his article and says, it's a shame when the party of Franklin Roosevelt has nothing to sell fear itself. And I was just like, you go. So you should read the article. It's particularly well done. They do note here that Richard, a former Hill Annapolis speechwriter, I've seen the man's speeches. They are really good. And you've probably heard some of them and didn't realize it. He lives in Baltimore, and you can find him at rjc-crosspurposes.blogspot.com. So do give him a look when you can. And the last thing that I have is I know a lot of you were talking about this on Shooter, that I get bears some discussion on this show. The Baltimore Sun wrote an article, Aaron Cox wrote an article in which they were talking about the San Bernardino, California shooting, and Governor Larry Hogan said Friday, I think that was the 3rd, 4th, something like that. The gun control laws prevent a shooting in California or spate of violence in Baltimore, and he suggested public officials need to look elsewhere for answers. Hogan told reporters that the killing of 14 people inside San Bernardino, California was an outrage and a tragedy, but the gun control is not the only solution. This issue goes beyond gun control, the Republican said outside a diner. California has the toughest gun laws in the country. We probably have the second toughest. It hasn't dusk. We have 350 murders. Baltimore, we had a tragedy in California. We've got to come up with better answers. And you know what? I think that gets right back to Richard Cross's piece. I really do. You want support? And you know, it's out of the box thinking. He's not, it would be very easy for him either to say nothing, absolutely nothing, or it would be, take a strong line because, I'm sure the guy won't mind being reelected. But he's right. Gun control is not the only solution. There are other solutions, and gun control is not working. And, we need to do something, and taking away people's guns it's only going to affect people who care about the law. So,
I still wish you hadn't used the word only.
Or whatever. What difference does it make?
Because it implies gun control.
It does not. He said it's not the only solution.
I said it implies it.
Yeah. Well,
Other people are inferring that very same thing.
Well,
So.
infer, but I agree. So I think he came right out in the next statement, and I just deleted the article, but it came right out in the next statement and said they have some of the toughest gun laws in California, and we probably have second tough gun laws here in the state, and it ain't working. So we need to look elsewhere for solutions. I don't know how much more clear you could be. So.
But that's not what everybody else quote. They will stop before.
For liberal media, what do you want? This is why shows like ours exist. Are you kidding me? And Bolt was not part of the solution. I think he was pretty clear about that. So, anybody else's audio choppy comes and goes. I don't know. Anyway, you have something?
I have a couple. I was actually looking through shooters and found one from yesterday afternoon. Frederick County deer hunting rifle changes, council member discussion by a member Minu who joined in November of 2015. So here's what it says. As many of you know, the DNR recently changed the laws to expand rifle use in Frederick County.
Oh,
Previously, much of the county was restricted to shotgun only during deer firearm season. I received the following email from my local town government.
Uh-oh.
I'm unable to attend and I'm not a deer hunter, though I'm thinking about going next season, Ron, symbol. But thought this may be of interest to our community. Text of the email. Frederick County Council member Jerry Donald from District 1 will host a town hall meeting on Saturday, December 12th at 2 p.m. at the Rand Community Center, 1635 Ballinger Creek Pike, Point of Rocks, Maryland. The topic of the discussion will focus on local firearm provisions for deer hunting. The Maryland DNR rules have recently been modified to expand rifle use formerly restricted to shotgun use only during deer hunting season. This has generated concern among the residents of southern Frederick County. Councilman Donald wants to hear from all those interested in the issue. Please join in the conversation. Councilor Donald, since Maryland DNR regulations have gone into effect, a number of my constituents have voiced safety concerns regarding the allowance of rifles to shoot deer in relative close proximity to their homes and neighborhood. To hear from you, want to express their opinions on this matter. For additional information, contact Councilman Donald at his phone number and via email. So for those of you who are potentially interested, Maryland shooters, I'll put the link thread in the room. But if anybody is on from Frederick County and is a hunter, it may do some good to get it out there. In the thread, down in the thread, somebody else mentioned that happens to be the last day firearm. And somebody from the district happened to write the councilman and say,
Bite me?
I'm not going to be there because I'm going to be at a tree stand.
Right.
You may or may not have selected this date for a reason, but it
What-
happens to be the last day
What
of deer
time
season.
is the meeting?
2 p.m. So
Is it after 9 o'clock yet?
not
I'm the middle of the night. To give me credit.
11.
I know. I've done well.
And his response basically was, well, that was the only time that worked out because anything that we want to present must go to session. Session starts in early January. And because of the holidays coming up and session starting shortly after
Could
the holidays,
possibly do that. It's
this was the
after
only
sundown.
Saturday.
Right. Sure it was. So yeah. So here's the thing. That hugely controversial bill in Frederick. I remember going through this and talking.
Well, it was
talking
changed
with-
regulatory, not statute.
Yeah, and I don't know how they can do that. But again, I work for NARS, so I know, but I find it fascinating because they had legislation in to change this. So maybe they discovered they didn't need it. I don't know, but pretty interesting stuff. Obviously, you guys, you don't have to live in Frederick to understand that, some parts of Frederick County are a little more heavily populated than others.
So,
But there are still rules about how far away from dwellings
well, I was
you
going to
have
say,
to be.
the law, hunters are responsible for complying with all of the safety standards in the law.
Right. I mean, they have,
They have to be wearing the appropriate amount of clothing, types of clothing. They have to the appropriate distances from all roadways and occupied
oddly
buildings.
enough, they have Cecil County is a rifle county,
There was comments actually in the thread from folks going, we don't have any problems.
and more land in Cecil than their Frederick. So, yeah. So it's but whatever. I'll let them work it out. I don't live there. I don't have to. It ain't my circus.
So one of the other comments read, so I was talking about a little ago, one of the members wrote, who's one of the industry partners actually, I read with interest that you have scheduled a town hall meeting to discuss changes on the firearms rules. Whether it was intentional or not, the fact that the meeting scheduled last day of fire season gives me great concern that only one point of view will be expressed at that meeting. I know I will be out in a tree stand that day and unable to attend.
wish I could be.
Therefore, I wanted to take the time to you on behalf of myself and 2 other hunters in my household to let you know that we were delighted by the changes and certainly would like to see the South Mountain, Jefferson, and areas south of Route 340 remain open to rifles. The whole shot rifle debate is done with any logic considering ballistics and other factors. Additionally, as a volunteer EMT, I am all too aware of the toll that deer car collisions take on us in this area, and anything that helps bring the deer population down is positive. The cattleman's response. The meeting at Point of Rocks was scheduled at the request of residents who wanted to talk about this. This began in Middletown when the town commissioners and Burgess asked me and Senator Huff about the DNR change. They then requested that the senator put in legislation so that the area around Middletown go back to shotgun only during rifle season.
Range has posted that you can still use rifles anywhere in Frederick County for varmints, which is interesting. I mean, granted, varmints tend to be lower to the ground or up in a tree, but
Well,
still,
up in a tree is a problem, potentially. That's a bigger, that would be more of a worry than under with a rifle in a tree stand shooting at a ground creature.
Yeah, well, just saying.
But there's a lot of gobbledygook, but it goes on one of these. Because this has to be changed through state law or regulation, it needs to be done by the holiday in early January when the assembly goes into session. That is how we wound up with Saturday's date. It wasn't done to exclude hunters. When this is all finished, I will simply tell the delegation what I have heard from the meeting I've attended and up to the DNR since it's a state function. Your email in support of the change to rifles will, of course, be included.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So we may have to have a chat.
Which senator?
Huff.
And
He's the one who's been requested by the council to put something in, or by the town. I'm sorry, the town commissioner and borough of Middletown want Senator Huff to put in a DNR bill change.
Okay.
Yeah. Same.
To change it to rifle or
to
change
take
it.
rifles away.
Well,
There's some interesting discussion in the thread about ballistics and the ballistic differences between slugs from a shotgun and rifles from bullets from a rifle and all
Right.
that. But regardless, the reason bringing it up is don't know where everybody in the chat room happens to live, but if you live in Frederick, know somebody in the Frederick County area, hunt in the Frederick County area, please be advised and take a look at the threads, comments, or get to the meeting or whatever. So I'm not a hunter personally. None of my friends are hunters personally, other than
I'd be hunting.
none of my friends that live in Frederick County are hunters. So,
Well, that's their loss.
all right, I got two more.
Okay.
There was one that I had read parts of, but from BearingArms.com on December 8th by Bob Owens.
Yeah.
Flowing like water, Obama's speech causes gun sales to spike. So once again, we can thank the president for being the best firearm salesman ever. So yeah, the article, quote, Barack Obama keeps patting his resume as the greatest gun salesman in history and is causing gun, magazine, and ammunition sales to spike yet again. So
Yeah, they got to be loving him.
all about the anti-gun rhetoric. And here's an interesting quote. Americans voted with their wallets and purchased enough firearms to equip a militia the size of the United States Marine Corps, hoorah, with enough guns left over to equip 2 Army divisions. I saw something that it showed somewhere over 100 million firearms over
Yeah.
I think just this year.
Yeah.
So we all know the San Bernardino attacks were A, an act of terrorism, B, as I said to somebody else in a comment that this person had left on a friend of mine's Facebook page, evil will do what evil wants to do. It doesn't matter the tool they use. The firearm is nothing more than a tool, as we discussed in one of the other article. So once again, though, as a result of Obama stepping up to a microphone and making a speech that instead of condemning terrorism, condemned Americans for being racist and against a religion, and that guns are evil and they need to be taken away.
Spoons, forks,
Yes.
knives.
It's made Rosie O'Donnell fat.
Yep.
All right. The last one, and I probably will actually read this one because I didn't get a chance to read it at all because I just literally saw it today.
Okay.
Today. Cam Edwards, host, NRA News, Cam and Company. Cam's Corner. It turns out they really are after your guns. No one wants to take your guns away. You've been told that as a gun owner for years now, right? You're crazy or paranoid to think that anyone calling for common sense gun laws or reasonable regulation actually wants to do anything with your guns. Nobody wants to take your guns, except for the New York Times, which published its first front page editorial in 85 years for some gun bans and confiscation. As the paper's editorial staff opined, certain kinds of weapons must be outlawed for civilian ownership. It's possible to define those guns in clear and effective ways. And yes, it requires consumers kind of weapons to give them up for the good of their fellow citizens. Yeah.
Yep.
Have fun with that. The president sits there and talks about England, and if we look at per capita crime statistics and you look at violent crime, and it's not really that much better.
Great. So
Let's see.
February.
He ends with, they really do want to take your guns away. They really do want to eradicate a constitutionally protected. Thank you, Cam, for saying it the right way. I hate it when people say a constitutional right. Nope, it's not a constitutional right. The Constitution just protects it through executive actions if necessary. They want a Supreme Court that will relegate the Heller decision to the dustbin of history alongside the Dred Scott and Plessy v. Ferguson decisions. It's up to us, the grassroots army of the NRA, 5 million strong and growing, and those people that aren't in the NRA but like to do this, to turn out the vote, and that work begins long before Election Day. So one of the things we were discussing, so we had...
Was your constitutional right? I was just want to get that in. That's gonna be a thing now.
In a meeting with some folks,
Mhm.
was the discussion of how do we frame our argument?
Mhm.
And we had interesting discussion around the table.
Mhm.
And that interesting discussion had some interesting fallouts with one person who asked to see a couple of us after that meeting. But the point was focusing exclusively on our Second Amendment protected rights. Most of us know, most of us who've been around for in my case, several years, in the cases of quite a few others, many, many more than that, that as soon as we say, and as soon as we testify that that this is a Second Amendment and the Second Amendment protects rights, we lose the audience, quite a bit of them. They just shut down. I've heard this before. I don't care. I don't want to hear it.
Oh, it's what's her name? What's her name? Senator. Her name. Don't talk. I don't want to hear about your She didn't want. She said she didn't care or something. Mike's talked about this 100 times. Mike Smiegel's talked about this 100 times, but she didn't care about your constitutional rights. She's do what she's supposed to do with them. But yeah, and it's a great legal argument. But frankly, a lot of these folks are low information on gun issues, so we have to go at this.
Well,
it's like when you don't write a graduate level paper for someone who's got an 8th grade reading level.
So one of the topics of discussion is recent events. So it's the conjecture of quite a few of us that have other roles and responsibilities. And do things in front of the legislature that we think that this is going to be a difficult year for us. So we've talked about the fact that I was kind of joking up front at the beginning of the show, 830 some odd hours, 34 days until session starts. And we think it's going to be not quite 2013, but not far off.
Well, we'll see.
We already have kind of guessed that there's probably going to be quite a few anti-bills based upon recent events. And one of the topics of discussion that we were having was, okay, what if we turn recent events and try to use them to our advantage? Change the argument a little bit. Instead of talking about just the fact that this is a fundamental civil right, even though we know it is, and that the Second Amendment protects it, even though we know it does. But talk about how this affects you as an individual and your ability to protect yourself and your loved ones. And from personal protection and self-defense aspect of things, focusing on that and focusing the conversation around that. Focusing the conversation around, okay, so you really are against me being able to protect myself in any way, not just because it's a right. Great, we know it's a right. They know it's a right. They don't give a shit.
Well, they their eyes roll in their head. They're constitutional. I mean, they equate the Tea Party with anybody that says the words Constitution. So, I have long since said we should hold those arguments for cases, for philosophical questions. But that's why I urge everybody, when you come and testify, have your bullet points, so to speak, have your talking points, and off if you beat you to them, that's fine. But don't come and read to these people. Come and talk to them. They come and educate them. Figure out the bill, figure out maybe there's some piece of information they don't understand. But guarantee you there are people sitting on, particularly on judiciary, who have never, they've seen guns, but they don't know anything about them. And they're buying off rhetoric. So you got to pull apart the rhetoric and educate them. Unfortunately, getting them into an environment where we could actually, teach them how to shoot would be, in their mind, like, I don't know, dating the devil or something. But So it's something to think about, and we'll talk more about it as we get closer to it. But the rally is February 2nd at
10 a.m.
10 a.m. So I would
Lawyers
urge you all
Mall,
to
Annapolis, Maryland.
Yeah. I would urge you all to come. If you cannot come to the rally on February 2nd, we will let you know when the things are really there to come and testify, and also send your testimony in.
And communicate with your legislators.
Yeah, it's going to be an important year regardless.
Visit your legislators, make it up to talk legislators.
Right. And you want your voice to be heard. If you want the delegates, the senators, and the governor to know that we are a strong community, you got to burn leave. I'll be burning leave too. As a matter of fact, I got to put in for it tomorrow, or soon anyway.
So, Raymond asked Mike and Dan too an idea.
You know what, Dan? But okay, I'm a little tired.
When we get the bill number that defines self-defense as GNS, have someone show up every day and testify to Valerio to get the bill out of his drawer. We can have a tag team every day. Someone can take a turn. So a few comments. One, we've some of us have said this before. Self-defense is already a good and substantial reason. How MSP has chosen to, by policy, not through regulation and not through statute, define how you prove self-defense is a problem. So good and substantial, and removing good and substantial, while it sounds good, I don't think, this is me talking, good and substantial, any of the bills that say strike good and substantial are dead on arrival. No matter how much we try to get in front of Valeria and everything else. I'll say this one as Mike, and as having worked down there even for the short time that I did. Pestering what this we classified as Joe Valerio about a bill and getting it out of his committee drawer won't work. And really, in reality, would likely work in the opposite direction and force him to drawer everything. That's not the way he really operates.
Well,
but
the problem is that we need to be a credible community. Okay, so if we're doing things that we know aren't going to work anyway, we lose credibility, and when we lose credibility, we lose political capital. So we need to think about these things carefully. So
we what we really need to kind of see is what are they going to do? What's the plan from some of the legislators on what they're going to do? And they have there are some of those discussions that are going on between the organizations and some of the folks up in Annapolis. As we get closer to session, we will likely have more discussions, and as session starts up, we will definitely have more discussions about how things are, what's presented.
I know, looking about on stage January 13th. All the bills that will have been read across the desk.
Well, yes, but what as mentioned in that room, is I just don't on the air. Self-defense is already there. What we need to correct and what we need to see something happen with is, whether it's statutory or regulatory, somebody needs to get on the feet to define this properly, and not going above and beyond. For example, like they did with the HQL live fire requirement, which was specifically discussed and removed as an option in the legislature, and the MP has just went ahead and said, well, it was legislative intent, so we put it in.
And Rain, we just happen to talk this because of your comment, but you are not the first one that has suggested things like this. You're not the second. You are not the sixth.
Not by a long shot.
This is not directed at you, darling. But it was. I'm actually glad you brought it up, because it was something I wanted to discuss. And it's an important point. So this is not directed at you. This is directed at the 6 or 7 people that I've heard from that, I've had to explain, no, credibility, political capital, those are the things that get you points in Annapolis. And you can't just, you have to, it's like going.
It,
Walk
to game this.
It is.
It's we need a strategy to go in there and do things with, and like it or not,
Excuse me.
he is the chairman of a committee. We want to get our point across, and we want to be able to work with the chairman to help get some things moving and try to get him to not stonewall stuff. We're beating a dead horse at this point, but it was an interesting idea, and I'm not saying it's not an interesting idea. I just think it's not necessarily one that works.
And let us remember too that Joe Valerio, we may not agree with Joe Valerio's votes. We may not agree with his procedures, but he treats us better and with more respect than Brian Frosch ever did.
So there is a very big, the fact that was sitting where he is sitting is the very reason why the Health and Government Operations Committee,
Yeah.
why there was enough mental health stuff thrown into FSA 2013
Right.
and sure that they needed to do a joint committee, because I'm pretty sure, having heard the words from other people, that behind the scenes folks up there after the fact, because I was that year, the scenes of that year, but that it would not have gone through Joe's committee. It would not have come out of the drawer if it had been left up to Joe. So they wound him and said, "We'll just joint committee." Therefore, there's two chairmen that would have to draw it in order to keep it from going anywhere.
Oh, so sorry.
Yeah, that I would definitely agree with Raymond. Joe's better than another person.
Right. Yep. So, all right. Well, listen, I am just about to fall asleep. So I am, we're done here, right? Did you do all your,
Yeah, I've done everything you sent me.
okay. So we will not see you. If we're going to have a show, I'll let you guys know in advance. I would need a producer and, don't have one. So, we will, let's see, next Wednesday is the
16th. The Wednesday after that is the
23rd. Are we going to do a show on the 23rd?
I will have to see, because I have in town.
I think.
I have to see, and I don't know what you guys.
All right. So please. So
And then the one after that is the day before New Year's Eve. It's definitely tired.
well, the before New Year is no big because we don't do anything big around here, but I don't know what you guys do either. But anyway, so we will post in Maryland Shooters and let you know what the schedule is through the days, and just we're going far. We will we will see you probably in 2 weeks. Maybe in 2 weeks because of the Christmas thing. So that could be a big issue. So, anyway, but I'm off on Christmas Eve. I took off. So,
I'm off on Christmas Eve because the place where I work is off Christmas.
Nice. Well, mine is so. We'll see you. And
check that. I should be off on Christmas Eve because Christmas Day is a Friday. So I'm definitely off on Christmas Day.
we will either see you before Christmas or before New Year's. But if we do not see you before Christmas, and I'm not saying we won't, just saying if we don't, I want to make sure I wish all of you guys a Merry Christmas and let you guys know that you are counted as gifts. So thank you much for listening. And I will post in Maryland Shooters as soon as Mike figures out what his schedule is, and we will roll from there. Good night, everybody.
Hammers back in the safety zone, safety zone. Hammers back to safety zone unless it's a Glock.